Welcome to my channel, Sella Buzz. What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest mystery stars breaks down on stage? That's what fans saw when Johnny Depp stood under the lights, holding his guitar, and gave a tears-filled tribute to his late friend Jeff Beck. The moment was already sad, but then something totally unexpected happened. The night became one of those rare times when a famous person's public and private lives crashed together in a way that felt real, unplanned, and unforgettable. Johnny Depp has always been a man of opposites. For many years, people have tried to label him the heartthrob, the rebel, the sad artist, the troublemaker headline. But the truth is, Johnny has never fit nicely into any box. He's hard to predict, messy sometimes, but deeply human underneath it all. Which is why this tribute to Jeff Beck hit such a nerve. It wasn't about Hollywood. It wasn't about image. It was about love, sadness, and music. To understand why this moment mattered so much, you have to know the friendship between Johnny Depp and Jeff Beck. On the surface, it almost didn't make sense. One was a world-famous actor known for playing weird roles and living a life always under the public eye. The other was a legendary guitar player, one of the most respected in the world, but someone who lived more in the shadows, letting his music do the talking. And yet, when these two men came together, it just clicked. They weren't just work partners. They were friends, real friends. The kind who laugh at things no one else gets, who sit quietly together without needing to fill the silence, who share the kind of trust that fame usually destroys. For Johnny, Jeff was more than a music partner. He was a lifeline, a safe place away from the constant noise of Hollywood, the lawsuits, the gossip, the endless cameras chasing his every move. With Jeff, he could just be Johnny, not Jack Sparrow. Not Edward Scissorhands, just Johnny. That's why Jeff's death hit so hard. When he passed away in early 2023, Johnny disappeared from the spotlight. Fans noticed it right away. He wasn't posting, he wasn't showing up anywhere, and he wasn't making statements. For weeks, there was only silence. And in that silence, people started wondering, how was Johnny really dealing with this? Could he even go back on stage without Jeff? Would the music they made together be left unfinished? The tribute concert was the answer. And it wasn't just any show. This was Johnny stepping into one of the hardest moments of his life, knowing the world would be watching, knowing he might fall apart in front of thousands, yet he did it anyway. The night began quietly. The lights went down, the crowd hushed, and then Johnny walked out. No Hollywood grand entrance, no swagger, just a man carrying his guitar and the weight of sadness. The applause started softly, but quickly grew as fans realized what it took for him to even be there. He started playing one of the songs he and Jeff used to perform together. The notes rang out, and right from the start, you could tell this was different. This wasn't about technical perfection. His voice was shaky. His hands trembled a little on the strings, but that was the point. It wasn't a performance. It was a goodbye. Halfway through, his voice cracked. The crowd held its breath. His eyes were red, shining under the stage lights. And then came the moment no one could have prepared for. He stopped singing, looked up, and whispered Jeff's name into the microphone. Just one word, just one name. But it carried more weight than an entire song. The audience erupted, not with cheers of entertainment, but with a roar of support. People clapped, shouted, and cried. It wasn't because the show was polished. It wasn't because it was perfect. It was because it was real. For a man who had built his career playing characters, this was the most non-character moment of his life. No mask, no costume, just Johnny, raw and sad. And here's the part most fans didn't know. Behind the scenes, Johnny had almost canceled. He'd told friends he wasn't sure he could handle it. He was scared that he'd fall apart in front of everyone. And in a way, he did. But that's exactly what made it powerful. He didn't hide the pain. He didn't pretend. He let it out. And that honesty is what made the night unforgettable. Critics who normally dismissed Johnny's musical side had to eat their words. One reviewer wrote, "It wasn't about skill that night. It was about honesty, and Depp gave the most honest performance of his life." Think about that for a second. Not his decades of acting, Not the famous roles, not the billion-dollar movies, but this shaky, emotional, broken performance. That's what people called his most real moment. But the story didn't end there. Just when it seemed like Johnny would walk off stage, drained and quiet, he surprised everyone. He took the mic, steadied himself, and shared something no one expected. He revealed that before Jeff passed, the two of them had secretly been working on a new project, something unfinished, something that still carried Jeff's spirit. The crowd went wild. In an instant, the energy shifted from sadness to celebration. What had started as a night of mourning turned into a promise of continuation. The music wasn't over. Their bond wasn't gone. It was still alive in the songs they had created together. That twist gave fans hope. Instead of leaving the concert with only sadness, they left with excitement. There was more to come. Something to look forward to. And that reveal turned the tribute from just another celebrity moment into something timeless. Reactions poured in from all over the world. Fans flooded social media with messages of support, sharing clips of Johnny's performance and praising him for showing weakness. "I've never seen him so real," one fan wrote. Another said that wasn't Johnny Depp, the actor. That was Johnny Depp, the friend. Even people who weren't fans before admitted they were moved. And it wasn't just the fans. Musicians and critics who had known Jeff Beck for decades spoke out too. Some said Johnny had honored Beck in the most real way possible. Others admitted the performance was messy, unpolished, and even fragile. But that was exactly why it was so moving, because sadness isn't polished. Sadness isn't staged. Sadness doesn't follow a script. It cracks voices. It shakes hands. It brings silence in between notes. And that night, Johnny Depp's performance was a mirror of what sadness really looks like. For once, it wasn't Hollywood. It wasn't an act. It was life, raw and unfiltered. Think about that for a moment. How often do you see a celebrity let themselves break down in front of thousands? Most of the time, they hide behind perfectly staged appearances, carefully written speeches, or tightly controlled press statements. But Johnny didn't do that. He didn't walk out trying to convince the world he was strong. He walked out carrying the weight of his loss, and instead of fighting it, he let it show. That's rare, and it's why people couldn't stop talking about it afterward. Clips of the tribute spread across social media within hours. Fans uploaded shaky videos from their phones showing Johnny wiping his eyes, pausing mid-song, whispering Jeff's name. Those clips weren't flashy or high quality, but they didn't need to be. The rawness was the story. The internet is filled with staged, rehearsed moments, but this one cut through because it wasn't rehearsed at all. People who weren't even fans of Johnny shared it, writing things like, "I never cared about Depp before, but this made me cry." Or, "That wasn't an actor. That was a man saying goodbye to his best friend." Even people who had spent years criticizing Johnny found themselves softening, at least for that moment, because there's something universal about loss. Everyone knows what it feels like to lose someone you love. Everyone knows the helplessness of standing in a moment where words just aren't enough. And watching Johnny go through that on stage reminded people that no matter how famous you are, sadness doesn't spare you. Behind the scenes, those close to Johnny revealed even more. He had nearly backed out of the show. In the days leading up to it, he told friends he wasn't sure he could go through with it. The idea of standing on stage without Jeff by his side seemed unbearable. For years, he'd leaned on Jeff, not just musically, but emotionally. Touring together had been his escape, his way of leaving the chaos of Hollywood behind, and now facing that stage alone felt impossible. But he showed up, and that choice is what made the tribute unforgettable. Because courage isn't about walking on stage with confidence. Courage is about walking on stage when you're shaking, when your voice is ready to break, when you're not sure you'll even make it through. And Johnny's courage that night came not from strength, but from being open. Critics picked up on this too. One reviewer described it perfectly. It wasn't about how well he played. It was about how deeply he felt. For once, Johnny Depp didn't play a character, he played himself. That line stuck with a lot of people. Johnny has spent his career hiding behind roles. Jack Sparrow, Edward Scissorhands, the Mad Hatter, countless others. But for those few minutes on stage, there was no character to shield him. It was just Johnny, stripped of the safety of a script. And then came the moment that flipped the night from sorrow to hope. After the tribute, when it seemed like he might quietly walk off stage, Johnny steadied himself and spoke into the mic. His voice was low, still shaky, but what he said changed everything. He told the audience about a secret project he and Jeff had been working on before his passing. A project no one knew about, songs that weren't finished, music that hadn't yet been released. The audience erupted. The sadness in the room shifted into excitement. Suddenly, this wasn't just a goodbye. It was a promise. The legacy of Jeff Beck wasn't ending with his death. It was continuing, living on through the music he and Johnny had created together. Fans cheered, some cried harder, but this time the tears weren't just for loss. They were for the hope that Jeff's voice and guitar would still echo through one final body of work. That announcement turned the tribute into something more than a performance. It became a bridge between the past and the future, a way of keeping Jeff alive through the art he loved most. And for Johnny, it was more than just sharing music. It was sharing healing. It was letting the world know that Jeff wasn't truly gone, that every chord, every lyric, every unfinished piece of their work would keep his spirit close. Media outlets rushed to cover the story. Headlines filled the internet. Depp's tearful tribute to Jeff Beck leaves fans in tears. Johnny Depp breaks down on stage, surprises crowd with secret project. Sadness turns to hope in Depp's emotional goodbye. For once, the coverage wasn't about scandal. It wasn't about trouble. It wasn't about courtroom drama or Hollywood gossip. It was about humanity, about love, about the rare moment when the mask of celebrity slipped off completely. Some journalists called it the most human moment of Depp's career. Others described it as messy but perfect. And that phrase, messy but perfect, captures exactly what sadness is. Because no one cries gracefully, no one mourns in neat little boxes. Sadness is jagged, it's unsteady, it interrupts songs, it breaks voices, it forces you to stop mid-sentence. And that's why the tribute connected so deeply. It didn't look like Hollywood. It looked like life. Fans who had attended the tribute described it as unforgettable. One said, "I've seen Johnny perform before, but this was different. You could feel the love in every note." Another shared, "I thought I was coming to a concert. I ended up witnessing something I'll never forget." And those comments kept pouring in long after the lights went down and the stage went dark. What's fascinating is how this single moment reshaped Johnny's image. For years, his career had been overshadowed by court battles, personal struggles, and constant scrutiny. Many thought his best days were behind him. But this tribute reminded people of something else. That beyond the headlines, Johnny Depp is still an artist. A flawed, complicated, but deeply passionate artist. And sometimes the purest art comes from pain. So what does this mean for Johnny moving forward? Some believe this was a turning point, proof that he's ready to fully embrace music. That he's no longer just an actor dabbling with a guitar, but a musician in his own right, carving out a second act. Others think this moment was too personal to repeat, that it should remain a one-time expression of sadness. But whatever direction he takes, one thing is certain. This night will be remembered as a defining chapter. Because at the heart of it, this wasn't about fame. It wasn't about Hollywood. It wasn't about image. It was about friendship, about loss, about the kind of bond that outlives even death. And, for once, Johnny Depp didn't need to act. He didn't need to perform. He just needed to feel, and the world felt it with him. So now I want you to think about it. How did you feel watching Johnny's tribute? Did it strike you as one of the most emotional moments we've ever seen from a celebrity? Or did it feel too raw, too unpolished to belong on a stage? Everyone will have their own take, but one thing's undeniable. That night, Johnny Depp reminded the world that no matter how big a star you are, sadness makes us all the same. And if, wow, this story moved you, there's more to explore. Johnny's journey isn't over. Far from it. His return to Hollywood, his projects, his music, all of it is part of a larger story still unfolding. If you want to keep following that story, make sure you watch the video linked right here about his shocking comeback. Trust me, it's worth it. And if you felt something during this story, give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that bell so you never miss what's coming next. Because one thing's for sure, the Johnny Depp story is far from finished. The press tried to spin it into headlines about Johnny's emotional breakdown, but for once, the narrative wasn't about scandal. It was about humanity, about reminding people that even the biggest stars aren't immune to loss, that they too cry, stumble, and find ways to keep going. And maybe that's the deeper lesson here. For years, Johnny Depp has been painted as larger than life. A pirate, a villain, a hero, a troublemaker. But this tribute stripped all of that away. On that stage, he wasn't any of those things. He was just a man saying goodbye to his friend. And that rawness, that openness connected with people in a way no blockbuster film ever could. The question now is, what does this mean for Johnny's future? Some believe this performance was a turning point, that he'll lean more into music now, maybe even redefine himself as a musician, rather than just an actor dabbling in another art form. Others think it was a one-time tribute, too personal to repeat, a moment that should stay frozen in time. Whatever the case, one thing is clear. This night changed how people see him. It wasn't a carefully constructed Hollywood comeback. It wasn't a script. It wasn't even clean. It was messy, emotional, honest. And that's why it mattered, because at the end of the day, celebrities are human first. They lose people. They feel sad. They break down. And sometimes they let the world see it. Johnny's tribute to Jeff Beck was never about being perfect. It was about being real, about friendship, about love, about saying goodbye. The only way. He knew how through music. So, what about you? How did you feel watching Johnny's tribute? Was it one of the most emotional moments you've ever seen from a celebrity? Or do you think it was too raw to be shared publicly? I'd love to know your thoughts, so drop them in the comments below. And if you want to dive even deeper into Johnny Depp's world, make sure you check out the other video I put together about his shocking return to Hollywood. That one's linked right here, and trust me, you don't want to miss it.